Hey guys, welcome back to the Paladins Alliance. It's been a long time since my last upload, and it's honestly just because I think we're in a really weird spot with CS right now where CS2 is out. I've been trying to test a lot of things in that game and understand how it's being played right now, where it's at right now, and what we can expect when we do move into that game completely. We don't have any real prestige tournaments going on right now, so it was really tough to kind of get together some ideas for some new videos. So apologies for the delay, but I'm back now and I do want to start this new series that we can continue on to CS2 where we do performance reviews. So I'm going to be titling this series Paladin's Performance Reviews. And I really just want to basically take a look at key players within certain tournaments, especially the ones that have a lot of eyes on them, a lot of scrutiny on them, and see whether or not they hold up to the narrative conversation that we build as a community. So, for example, I really want to see if FlameZ is the real deal for this roster. We have a lot of people that talk about the fact that Vitality look a lot more active right now, a lot more dynamic because of FlameZ on this roster in comparison to that of dupreeh. And of course, they've already locked in a tournament win at Gamers 8, which is granted, Let's BO3's won, but still a very impressive feat nonetheless to defeat the world number 2 in ENCE, in my opinion. So that was really cool to see. But now that we have a little bit more of a sample size today, or more so last week, of Group A of EPL, I wanted to basically scrub through those 4 demos and see basically what FlameZ is doing on this roster, whether it's sustainable, whether he did well in this group stage, whether this 1.18 rating is actually worthy of his status within World Counter-Strike right now, and whether or not this is something that we can keep an eye on for the future of Vitality. Of course, it's very exciting to see them prosper in such a way, look so consistently good right now. But I do really want to see if FlameZ is the real deal, which is the purpose of this video. And as you'll see later down the road, we'll look at other players that a lot of people are like, oh, was it what was it this player's fault that this player wasn't good, or was this player not having a flash in the pan performance? Was it something that wasn't consistent? So I hope you join me in this series. I kind of want to make this a regular thing because it is just very simple to kind of go through the demos, and we learn a lot about these players and whether or not they're sustainable within these tournaments. And I think that for the future, this could be very helpful to look back on and to look forward in time as to what we can expect from some of these players. Of course, when we look at the matches played from FlameZ, it looks great across the board. It's all green. It all looks great. I've actually not even bothered to look at the Orc series because I kind of just void that out of my memory. It's not really a complicated game. Orcs is a pretty much a no-name team. This is ex-Paloma that battled through that national championship that I wasn't really impressed with, and I don't know. I don't really like what I saw from their run through that tournament, that I didn't really want to give any of that series credence. Of course, the other 2 series, NIP and Movistar, NIP do look very disjointed. It looked very disjointed throughout this Pro League. I really don't know what's going on with them, especially considering I really expected for Hampus to be a better fit for that team. But perhaps it does give a little bit boost of credit to LXCB to work with that roster and potentially make the major with that lineup that really has no argument in being in that conversation, at least as of right now. So in fact, FlameZ especially did very good in this series. Dropped off a little bit in form on Overpass. I actually haven't gotten enough rounds to pick out on Overpass in specific. I'll get to that when we get to that point of the video. And then, of course, we'll end with Inferno. Just a couple rounds here and there to really highlight and showcase what is great about FlameZ, and maybe a couple here and there that I think that he could work on and that Vitality still have some ironing out to do. So without further ado, let's get into FlameZ here at EPL Season 18 Group A. When it comes to the previous Vitality lineup, the obvious shortcoming was how unwilling dupreeh was to move around the map and allow for Vitality to have a lot more complex CT sides. You look at the very active CT defenses, the best defenses in the world right now, and you can kind of list them off. You have G2, you have Heroic, you have ENCE, and of course teams like Nine have even been adopting that very similar style. That is the meta right now in creating very dynamic and active CT sides to really disjoint the offense and make sure that they're not allowed to get settled within their defaults and allow them to really just dictate the pace for as long as they please. So you need players like FlameZ to join this roster and to allow for more perspectives within their defense to kind of create a lot more of a interesting CT side that is very hard to read and is much less static in comparison to that Dupree lineup. And FlameZ have been doing a very good job with that. You see on maps like a Mirage and Inferno, where he's really got these CT ideas on lock and already seems to be very keyed in to these ideas. Of course, the obvious shortcoming as of right now, with it being a new lineup, is the fact that he hasn't been able to expand that across all of the map pool. You can see maps like Anubis and Vertigo. There is still room to be and work to be done there. And I think that given time, he should be able to slot into it no problem, because I think he understands the general philosophy of what his role is on this team and can opt in for either sides of that coin. Can play very aggressive and very dynamic on short, and he can also kind of play it back on anchor roles in terms of just that B site, playing the site itself and on whatnot. But here in this round specifically, we'll take a look at one of those more dynamic plays from FlameZ, where he doesn't even actually opt in to play on that B bomb site outright, considering he has one of the rifles in play. So he actually goes for an aggressive play into apps straight away. Doesn't spot anything out, but does make his site players a lot more at ease in terms of where they can dedicate their resources to. Of course, Rez gets that opening pick in mid, and NIP decide to opt in for a little bit more of a cat play here. Zaiwu does get one, and that immediately stalls the offense out here a little bit. Even though Hetrick does get one, FlameZ is now given a lot of room to kind of think about where NIP might be able to move. Spinks, obviously getting that kill in window, continues to sow seeds of doubt in NIP's minds, and FlameZ decides to say, okay, I have to now anchor the A-bomb site. I can potentially move around here and get a little bit more of a positional advantage. So he decides to actually mid-round play here to clear out ramp to gather even more information. Actually circumnavigates all of the remaining NIP members, but does get a lot of information nevertheless, especially when he's going to hear the drop here when they come through Palisade. So with this advanced positioning, FlameZ can also dictate a double rotation onto that B bomb site, and has a lot of real estate here on this A bomb site as well. So you hear that drop there, and Hetrick actually takes first contact in jungle, but FlameZ gets that first kill, and now there's a lot of room to work with. HP advantage onto that fight with Rez. Rez can't convert the kill, and FlameZ single-handedly has just won the round here by Vitality through sheer offensive capabilities throughout Palace, and then that mid to late round positioning on ramp. It basically seals the deal and guarantees the round here and the force buy for the CTs. So very, very smartly played here by FlameZ, and really dynamic play through that Palace and ramp position. I think another big thing that I was very curious to see and understand about FlameZ is whether or not he could actually commit to the idea of being just a hard anchor. Of course, on OG, he didn't necessarily play that kind of a role. I think this is the biggest worry that I had for him coming into this lineup, that he would have to slot in to be a little bit more of a supportive player. But I think Vitality have found a great balance between FlameZ being that OG FlameZ, where he is a little bit more aggressive on these CT sides. He's a space taker, he's a space creator on that T side. But he can also phone it in and become a Vitality FlameZ, where he does be a little bit more of an anchor duty player, a lot more supportive, plays with more util, stalls for time, gathers a lot of information. And I think he understands that he has some of the best trade fraggers in the world. You have players like Spinks, Magic, Zaiwu. I mean, it's such an incredible core that you can be a little bit more supportive, knowing that it is confirming you a lot more rounds. But this round dictates a lot more of the supportive play that he would show on Vitality CT sides. And this is something that he showcased a little bit more on the maps that they don't play as much. You can see on Overpass, he's that more of a B anchor. He doesn't have too many aggressive looks. And here as well, he is just playing that B anchor role, jump spotting for information, as every good B anchor does. Gathers a little bit of information there, and then stalls just for enough time, doesn't take that aggressive B apps duel, and waits for his teammate to come in. And that does allow him to potentially slink on over back to the A bomb site, or he can shift over to Cat to answer some mid fights as well. As you can see, Hampus does punish some TV room aggression there. And Vitality have to kind of rejig the setup a little bit. So understanding that mid could be open, FlameZ decides to try to take some space here. Of course, he spots a little bit off of, I think, the player on bench there. Not exactly sure, but that smoke does give a lot of space to NIP, and FlameZ wants to basically confirm that there is no mid presence here, and can rely on that B-side player right now of ZywOo to stay alive before he comes into play. So they jump out, ZywOo hits a tag, and that's where FlameZ plays very well off the contact of ZywOo and the information, spams very well off the smoke, and just showcases that he can walk that fine line very, very well. So plus points here for him, absolutely, after seeing just the consistency he was able to put out, especially here against NIP. So one last round on CT Mirage here that we can kind of look at, and I think these couple of rounds kind of holistically shows what FlameZ' performance was on Mirage, and it was just very good. Very, very impressed by what I've seen from him on this map specifically, and you'll basically see this round as the last one I picked out, just to show you the problem-solving skills that he's showing on display, and the adaptability that FlameZ has into this role of a B anchor into this round specifically. It's a half buy from NIP, but it's one that does get a little hairy for Vitality, all things considered. He tries to have this little bit of an early jump into apps for Spinks. Great little movement there, and a nice little dynamic setup to potentially get him out of apps, while also being able to fight and continue to fight. So nice little flash there for NIP to get into the site, but Spinks and FlameZ combine to take down Brolin, and they kind of get stuck in the apps here, but they keep trying to fight. But as soon as FlameZ continues to see more and more bodies, and Hampus gets another kill in into the market player, FlameZ realizes that we're losing personnel, we're losing space, and I have to stay alive here, and I have to delay this plant for as long as possible. And so he drops this front smoke that a lot of B anchors like to throw, and throws that single flash and falls back. He hears the Galil as well, and he understands that there is still firepower in this round. There's still potential for me to lose this round if I give away my life here. And instead of trying to take the duel, instead of trying to play around that smoke and try to get cheeky with it, he falls back to empty pillar and decides to basically just play the stall game. He does leave his player in Spinks out to dry, and that is a risk that you are running, but FlameZ realizes that his life and to stay alive is so much more valuable than potentially trying to keep Spinks alive instead. So you just see him, and watch out with him on low ammo, low HP, just trying to dance around and get information, stall for as long as possible. As you can see on the minimap, Magic's making his way up short, and ZywOo trying to get onto the site itself. So there's this stall game happening, and FlameZ understands that he just has to stay alive here for as long as possible and deny that plant for as long as possible as well. So he keeps trying to jiggle, he keeps trying to duel with Config, and eventually Config gets the better of him, but they've taken too long at this point. Look at where Magic is now. He's made his way all the way through Con, all the way up Cat, and now there's no way to really deny this play from him. They try to fight him Cat. That's where ZywOo comes through that market window of smoke, gets the early kill onto Rez, and then Magic chimes in. Great little 1-2 punch there from Magic and ZywOo, but you've got to give credit to FlameZ in the fact that he's able to stay alive for so long and still have a little bit more of a dynamic setup there with his site-mate and Spinks. So really, really cool stuff from FlameZ throughout Mirage. You've got to give him plus points here. I mean, I think I'd honestly give him a 9.5 out of 10 performance in terms of just the way he was able to showcase himself on the CT side of Mirage. So we'll jump in to that next series, to that next map in the series of Nuke here. I'll be honest with you, I think as in terms of the number of T rounds I've picked out for FlameZ here on Vitality, I've only picked out 2, because a lot of the times FlameZ is just willing to run out and essentially die for his team, understanding that they can get a very high trade percentage into these bomb sites. But this round in specific, he had a lot of big impact considering he wasn't able to go down in those early round engagements. And you can tell that throughout this Nuke half that Vitality won through a lot of clutches and very scrappy CS once they would get into these post-plant situations. And they basically scraped together I think 6 rounds or so before switching over to that T side, or sorry, that CT side, and then we'll see just how Flames operates in that top side anchor position. But this round in specific, I just wanted to showcase to you the amount of impact that he's able to have on a 4 spot here. Only 1 smoke, actually 2 smokes here off of Spinx and Apex to potentially cross outside. But they actually used their first smoke already. Actually, no, I'd say that was an NIP smoke instead. But they just want to duel outside here. Spinx wins just a dry fight against Hampus on the mini. And they basically have a free route into lower. They get a lot of rotates down. And FlameZ is just going to be that point man to try and create space. He doesn't really care about what angles he's exposed to. He understands that he can just relay that information as fast as possible. And he'll have a player to respond in kind. So, of course, Config rings his bell there with that M4. But FlameZ actually still has a ton of impact in this round, as you'll see as this round continues to take shape. You see him just jumping around throughout certain positions, just knowing that he is on low HP and his life is not really that important. He understands that there's players behind him that are very willing to kind of take that attention away from him and get that trade instantaneously. So FlameZ is now going to be parked in radio, understands that the glass is open here, and can take some contact if need be. So Apex does die, I believe, pushing into lobby. So they do not have a vent rotate to cut off at this point anymore. So they have to just rely on these 4 players that are down here on this B bomb site. And FlameZ is going to have to kind of cook up something magical here. I don't necessarily know what he's turning away from, potentially a flash from Headtrick, but instead Brolin is just going to contact his way out, and FlameZ hits an insane little headshot there, that double dink there onto Brolin, and now has so much room to work with for Vitality. They now have all of control, and they have potential double door room access and single door room access if they so choose. So they decide to continue to stall. FlameZ continuing to hold on to this part of the map, and eventually they trade into that single door access. Magisk goes 1-for-1 with Config and can now potentially plant on that A bomb or that B bomb site. And now FlameZ continues to move around and try to get a little bit more information. Great trade there onto Headtrick, and he feels as though he shouldn't be able to get that trade as well, but Headtrick can't land a bullet. And FlameZ stayed alive for a little bit longer. He mollies off ramp, and I think at this point in time, FlameZ understands that, hey, the internal timer goes off in his head saying that our player that was supposed to cut off vent rotates has been killed a while ago now, and they should be given free access to come down into lower. Rez did get that kill in upper site, right? So FlameZ moves over, tries to get himself locked and loaded into vent, and that's where Rez decides to try to play with the ladder there, but FlameZ is very aware of it. 3 kills there on 1 HP, and it's just very key awareness to play off the contact with specific players, and then internal timers as well to kind of capitalize on mismanaged rotations as well. So really key impact from FlameZ, and he has this sprinkled in throughout all of EPL, but it's a dime a dozen, and most of the time it is just him trying to create space for this roster and give just an unfiltered way for players like Spinx and Zywoo to just get free trades for him, which is completely respectable considering the status that these players have in 2023 as of right now. So let's now jump over to that CT side to just watch how he played the top anchor position. I think this is one of the most difficult roles to play if you are one of the more supportive players on a team. Topside anchoring is just so difficult because you have so many angles you have to deal with. You have to cycle your utility in a very timely manner and make sure to spread it out and use as much of it as possible. Still be able to get information for your players that are playing in mini or outside, in potential hut plays, in potential squeaky plays. So there's a lot of places where things can go wrong, and it definitely needs the most time and experience to develop. And you can see that FlameZ, I think in terms of all the maps in the pool, this is the one I think he needs the most work on. And that being said, I still think that it's something that he already has a really good handle of. But this round in specific, it did feel a bit odd. So he throws that initial Molotov to stop off hut control, and actually uses his utility pretty nicely here. Smokes off the squeaky position, and then is essentially just able to stall here. Spinx will watch a little bit of outside and mini through that and squeak door. Has a little bit of a crossfire here alongside his site mate in Spinx here. So they start to take a little bit of outside control. I think they smoke off a little bit of outside of mini. And Flames and Spinks kind of are going off and thinking, look, I think there's a little bit of a chance that the top side could be coming, so they kind of turtle in here instead of trying to take any duels. No shenanigans happening in that mini smoke, and Flames quickly decides to realize it and tucks into Tetris here. But this topside hit comes in, right? And I think the biggest issue here is the unwillingness that Flames has to believe in his teammates' comms. I'm not necessarily sure if it was Apex's fault here or if it was Spinks' fault, but basically, Flames takes those first 2 kills and actually spots a little bit of Brolin here. But I'm assuming that this is just Spinks not being able to get enough information here off of Squeak Door and not enough information from Apex here to relay quickly to Flames that a third player is in front, and actually turns away and gives away a kill. So a little bit of a defensive collapse there in terms of the communication, which is one of the biggest issues that Vitality has had in iterations past. But I do think that this is something that can be ironed out very quickly, and I think that's something that Flames can keep in mind of. But there were a couple of miscommunications here that could have denied Vitality a couple more rounds throughout the CT side. I think they still managed to get it over the line. Yeah, they still do. But it is something that you can see that maybe there's a world where a player gets another entry that they shouldn't have, and it comes all down to that slight miscommunication that could have been there in terms of just making sure that Flames is aware that he doesn't have to turn away. He should be guaranteed that 3rd kill every day of the week, especially with that Molotov going down. But this was one of the dings that I did have on him in terms of that performance review, but still very, very clean stuff. And I think that this still showcases that he still has the firepower to at least get that double, right? So as far as the rest of Nuke goes, it was a very similar situation to that of Mirage, where he is very willing to take some early duels, still very good at anchoring, and I think overall, I think it was definitely a drop-off in performance in comparison to Mirage, but he still showcased some very fine top anchoring as a CT. And of course, on that T side, a lot of space taking, a lot of opening space just being given over to Flames, even though it wasn't netting them kills. It was definitely netting them at least enough rounds to work with as soon as they switched over to that other side. And the reason why I'm not actually picked out any rounds from Overpass is just because it was a lot more of, it wasn't really necessarily the flashiest of rounds. It's definitely not something that I can just kind of pick out because a lot of the rounds played out very similar to one another. On that T side, I genuinely cannot express to you how many times he was just running knife out and just and creating space for players like Spinks and Zayu to trade and finding their way into these sites, especially on Overpass. They just love to find a way to just scrap their way into those post plants and win out just by through sheer trading. And Flames is very willing to just die a lot of the times in that side. And then on the CT side, you can definitely tell that we're at a state in a very stale, I have to say, Overpass meta where you have 3 players turtling up on that B bomb site, if not 4, and there's 1 player jump spotting from back dice. And Flames is that player that is a little bit more turtled up than the rest of the players on that Vitality roster. You'd have situations where he was occasionally flashing a short, but it didn't necessarily work out as much. But he's definitely less active on that map, and I don't necessarily think it's because of him. I think it's more so just the map and the state of it is right now. Is you do have to be a little bit more turtled, and you were a bit more aggressive on that A side of the map, and he didn't have necessarily too many looks there. So overall, I just didn't pick out any maps on Overpass, or sorry, any rounds on Overpass. But he did look okay there. I'd probably give it like a 7, 7.5 out of 10. Nothing crazy. Honestly, I'd probably give him like more like a 7. But I just wanted to close out here on Inferno. They absolutely stomped all over Movistar. And again, you have to give credit to just the space taking of Flames here, very similar to that of Overpass, where he's just taking a lot of room for these members. And he's just very willing to get some of these entries. And when he gets those entries, it's basically round done. The entries are just a benefit for Vitality, not a necessity though. So you'll see here the value of it into the mid to late round, and how he was able to open up the map here for Vitality in the last round of the half here against Movistar Riders. So they actually get started in a 4v5. Apex tries to get a lot of info in top mid and isn't able to do so, and there's a very awkward situation here where Flames as well as his teammate and Spinks decide to move up, and they completely ignore Adam S here in the boiler, and Spinks eventually, so once that pin is pulled, Flames will alert alert Adam S of Spinks' presence. He can't actually trade it out until later, and that initial Molotov that he had thrown onto Cubby, it now gets activated into Just, and he's managed to snap over and get that trade. So now, Flames has essentially gotten all of brackets here for Vitality, and so he decides to call over his teammates. And instead of just trying to barrage their way into that A bomb site, they decided to play it safe, let FlameZ get a little bit more controls, try to scout out a little bit more of Art's side, and as you'll see, he gets all that space for free. That they decided to just completely circumnavigate these Movistar Rider players, and they actually catch a beautiful timing onto Mopaz and Alex here that try to reorient themselves into brackets. Mopaz tries to get a little bit more information, but by this time it's a little bit too late. Alex has to hightail it back to that B bomb site, and Mopaz is going to be in a world of hurt here with ZywOo punishing that arch aggression. So now Flames can kind of just barrel his way through. He will die off of that spam from Alex, but the damage is already done. And Magis will dunk on Alex here, and Vitality will essentially secure themselves this final round. So I have to really give credit to Flames here, especially on Inferno. He's such a great player in terms of finding openings, but also very keen and intelligent in how he's taking these opening spaces and making just a much more interesting T-half here for Vitality. Gives them a lot more options in terms of the mid to late round, and this round is a very big highlight of that. So great T-sided rounds from Flames on Mirage and Inferno especially. So final rating here. This will be the inaugural performance review rating of the series, and I will give Flames an 8 out of 10. I am really impressed by the initial bones of his anchoring in terms of Mirage and Inferno, as well as the initial ideas that he's showing on Nuke. I definitely still think there's room to be improved upon. It's not necessarily the most elite anchoring that I've seen so far, and that is to be understood that, you know, Flames is not necessarily in these roles throughout his time on OG. So I will give him that leeway that there's still room to improve. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing here from Flames. He's very aware of the roles that he has and understands that he has a very good core to work with, that he doesn't have to be the hero as he was on OG, and he can give a lot of room to players like Spinks, like ZywOo, even players like Magisk to kind of work the map and pick up the pieces that he might leave on the table. So I'm very happy with what I've seen from Flames. He is legit. He is showing up where Vitality needs it. Definitely development needed in terms of the communication department and improvement on being that stoic anchor. But I think that comes with time and especially with experience, and Flames will certainly be on his way. Definitely one to be looking out for, and I have to say credit to Vitality for taking a risk on such of a move and seeing the fruits of their labor almost instantaneously. I think the sky's the limit for this Vitality roster, and they're already making waves as of yet. So keep a lookout for them in the playoffs. We'll definitely keep an eye on them here on this channel. But as far as Paladin's performance review goes, that is going to do it for this first episode. We'll have one immediately for the next EPL group, and we'll have it throughout all of the groups of EPL, one player throughout all of them, to see and basically analyze these performances and whether or not they were legit, or players that might have gone under the radar, but it's still within the community zeitgeist. So keep an eye on this channel. Try to get those regular uploads out for you. But from here on the Paladin's Alliance channel, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.